Okay, so in this fifth and final RStudio activity, activity number 5, this is just going to be testing for statistical significance and the strength of that test. So this would be the last step that you'd be doing for your paper as well. This one we're not going to be doing as much graphical representation or write-up, but this is more of like the quantitative analysis of baseline to intervention. So for this activity, we're going to be using Jenny AB. And then I'm just going to go through the first 3 steps that we've done in the other activities as well. So let me just start by requiring single system design for R. While that's running, I will search for Jenny AB. And I have it saved it to the same file as before. And then the last step here is to attach the single system design. And once it's attached, the next step that we'll need to do is just do an A/B test. So of crying, which is the outcome variable for Jenny, the phase of the crying from A to B, baseline to intervention. And if you bought the textbook, you can find more about this test on page 87. It will explain it conceptually as well as what's going on with RStudio here. Okay, so this shows us our baseline and intervention mean over on the right. You don't really need to do anything with this for the RStudio activity. But what's interesting over here is your t-test. So here we can see what we need to know for our t-test. And most importantly is the p-value here. So hopefully you read more about this from the readings for the course. Maybe you know about this from previous research courses. But our p-value is basically a test of statistical significance. So RStudio is going to give us a 2-sample t-test, f-test to compare the 2 variances, and a Welch's 2-sample. But all we really need to look at is the 2-sample t-test. The other 2 are just kind of beyond this course, but I would say the main thing that you want to look at is the p-value here. And anything that's below 0.05 is statistically significant, meaning that the change from baseline phase to intervention phase is not expected to be simply from chance alone. So this is definitely an example of something that's statistically significant. In that case, we would want to follow up with a measure of effect size. So the first question for this activity is if it is statistically significant, and if so, to write up the t-test, which, it obviously is statistically significant. Okay, so now that we know that the crying is statistically significant, we're going to want to follow that up with an effect size that'll tell us the strength of the association. So the t-test just tells us whether or not it's statistically significant, but the strength of that relationship associated with the intervention we'll learn more about by looking at the effect size. So I'd like for you to write up the d-index, and again, you can find out more about this in page 56 of your book. So again, just copy and paste this out just like previously. And I've actually run this already, but the main thing that you're going to want to look at is the d-index here. So the d-index, you'll find out more about this, but in the book and the examples from the course readings, you'll find out how to write up an effect size. So the d-index here is 1.51 with a percent change of 43.45. So this tells us the strength of the association of the intervention. So we could say that in this example, there's a statistically significant change in Jenny's yelling behaviors from baseline to intervention, resulting in an effect size of a d-index of 1.51, which is a 43.45% reduction in average crying from baseline to intervention. And you can figure out more about how to write this up in APA format, either online or from the course materials. So then the last step here is just to write these up and put it in your paper. And likewise, once you figured out how to do this, that'll be the last step for analyzing your own single system design data.